And I just thought, man, what a timely and topical thing to discuss right now if things are going to be a little tighter tomorrow than they were yesterday. Hey, gang. So here's the truth, and boy, you want to talk about truth. This is like about as vulnerable and as truth-telling as I can, go live with here, right? So to Green Tribe Nation, the budget game has always been a tough one for me. I've always made the mistake of feeling like it's overly punitive, or it's unnecessarily restrictive, or it's just plain no fun. And, the reality also, to kind of flash forward into this being part of the COVID's series, is, more than ever before right now, resources across the board are probably going to be more tight. Whether that's not true for you, great. But, like for most folks we're talking to right now who are calling in, with challenges, hoping for a little bit of insight, one of the first things that's kind of coming up here is, it's a little bit less faucet, than before, and, a little bit more drain than before as well. So the best way that I know how to have an honest conversation about this is with my buddy, Terry Bickmore. Now, Terry Bickmore, and first of all, Terry, just say hi to your fans and who are you? What do you do? Where are you at? And maybe just a quick little 30-seconder on why in my life you are the budget dude.
Well, thanks, Jesse. First of all, hello to everyone. And I don't pretend to be an expert, but I know that it's been a blessing for me in my life. And I'm a realtor. I work out of the Salt Lake City market and know Jesse because of our affiliation with Bro Vance and Joe Stump. So that's me.
Yeah, well said and said well. And in that, you introduced to us as a group your affinity for doing exactly that slug and that lifting that I just shared was so difficult for me in my life in front of everybody, at least for our group there. And you went first and you found that book, right? It's the YNAB, right? You Need a Budget, right? Go. And you tracked down that technology and you installed it in your life and you've had incredible success. And I just thought, man, what a timely and topical thing to discuss right now if things are going to be a little tighter tomorrow than they were yesterday, than to maybe have you kind of walk us through what the top 2, 3, or 4 things that made a difference for you in approaching that with such success for yourself and your family.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. Like I said, you're talking to somebody that was just like you guys, and still like many of you, that money is a constant struggle, right? And so for me, the rules behind this budgeting software that's called, as Jesse said, You Need a Budget. It's an acronym YNAB for You Need a Budget. It was game changing for me, and it changed my life. It changed my business. It changed my family's life. And so, I'm happy to share, what worked for me. That'd be awesome.
So maybe we start, closest in, right? So, let's just pretend that book's out there, and maybe if it's even in the possession of somebody who wants to do this for themselves, they got the app downloaded, right? It's a whole little synergistic thing there. But where do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, first of all, become familiar with the rules, because this is about the rules that YNAB brings to the table, right? This is not about the unique software. The software is wonderful and it has all the bells and whistles and it works perfectly with your mobile and all that kind of stuff. But for me, if I was starting out, I would become familiar with the philosophies behind this budgeting software. Because that's where it's going to be a game changer. That's where it's going to set it apart from Every Dollar or Mint or Quicken or whatever your jam is, or the thing that you've tried to do in the past.
Yeah, I've tried.
That's where I would start. I would start with becoming very familiar with those rules, those guidelines.
Okay, well then let's start there then, if that's the closest in. So what would be rule number? By the way, I already made the disclaimer. I love me some rules, right? Who said love some rules? But it's the discipline, right? It's the railroad tracks to be able to get to where you are right now, or where I am even right now in this conversation, to where it is that we'd all like to be, a little bit closer to having that comfort and control and mastery around dollars coming in versus dollars going out. So what's rule number 1 then?
Okay, cool. Can I share my screen then?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we're gonna do that.
Oh, cool. You got show and tells. I love it.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little show and tell, and we're just kind of on the fly here. So, and let me back up. So if people are actually watching this live, they can jump right on to ynab.com/realtors. You don't have to be a realtor, but go there, and that'll get you to YNAB's site, which will be helpful. So I want to start with a couple of things that I think are even more important, kind of to set some framework. And that is, you had mentioned it, Jesse, budgeting is not a great topic of conversation, right? People would rather talk about their sex life openly than they would about their money. And at the end of the day, what I want to do, or the hope is that people will understand that budgeting doesn't have to be restrictive and weigh you down and a cause for argument and fights between you and your significant other or whatever. So when I did some deep private work around money and budgeting a few weeks back, I came up with these things that I believe to be true about money. And that's what you're looking at here. And the first one is that everybody needs to learn to manage or control the money. If you don't, it will manage and control you.
Yeah, well said.
And that's truth one. Truth two is that sound financial principles need to be applied in your life, regardless of your individual financial situation, whether you have boatloads of it or little of it. And the third is, if you really want to grow wealth, you need to be working within a framework. And we're going to use the word budget for lack of a better one, right? So those things I believe to be true. And what I believe to absolutely be a falsehood is super important. And that is that budgeting.
That was almost exactly what I said.
That's exactly it, right? Budgeting, is restrictive, restraining, sucks the joy out of life. In fact, it's the exact opposite. When budgeting is done correctly with implementing those 4 rules that we're going to talk about here in a bit, it's liberating. It gives you freedom that you never thought possible.
Well, let me, if I might, let's sprinkle a little bit of truth on that, right? So yes. I would say, because as I experienced that, so let's just say this is my truth, is that what's probably more accurate is that there is going to be a dip, right? So if you're just kind of, rolling through, meandering through the day, bumping into things with random happenstance, money out, money in, who knows, whatever, and you then move into something with discipline, it's going to probably suck a little bit at the beginning. The same way that like waking up earlier sucks in the beginning, but then it's really cool. Or working out the first month sucks in the beginning, but then it gets kind of cool. Like there's probably a suck period, but what I'm seeing you kind of say is, hey, from the other side of the dip, it's actually pretty damn cool.
Well said, Jesse. And you know what? There's a learning curve, right? So I don't know of anybody that's going to say, hey, I want to budget my money. And like day one or week one or month one, they feel like they have all the answers. So there's definitely a learning curve. And for some people, it's a shorter curve than others or smaller curve. For me, I would say it wasn't a very short learning curve. But once I got it and committed to it, the light bulb went off quickly. So even though it took some time to kind of master the principles, the hope that it created in me was almost instantaneous once I gave it a shot. And man, that's what it's about. When you're going through tough financial times, or you've got a great financial goal that you're working toward, the driver's got to be the hope. If you can't get behind it and whatever you're using doesn't create the hope that will propel you forward, you're not going to be successful. So yeah, there's truth to that. It can be a slog at first, but for me, it was the hope that helped me get through that tough part.
Fair.
So, other questions, or do you want to launch in and cover a couple of these rules?
Give every dollar a job. That seems to be self-explanatory, but maybe unpack that a little bit.
Okay, so my insight behind that, and this is a big reason why this software is different than others. It requires you to really focus on what your true priorities around money are.
Right.
And the principle behind YNAB, it's zero-based budgeting, right? So they're not teaching you to go out and say, my house payment is, $2,000 a month and my car's $500 and I spend $800 on groceries. What they teach you is a simple principle. Anytime you get any income that comes in to your bank, you have to give those dollars a job. And obviously the first dollars that come in for the month, you're going to be covering the basics. You got to make sure you have enough food. you got to make sure you have shelter, you got to make sure you have the utilities, right? But beyond that, if you have money that's extra, it forces you to examine your life, your priorities, and decide where do you want to categorize that money. You know, what's important to Jesse might not be the same thing that's important to me. And when I started this game, I started this thing 7 years ago. And for me, I was way late in the game in terms of trying to earn enough money to even think about retiring. So my priority was pretty important, which was we wanted to retire. You know, I love what I do, but I want to do it because I love it. I don't want to do it because I have to bring home food. And so that's a key difference. You know, obviously you got to cover the basics and the essentials, but beyond that, so many times people are just spending without giving thought to what their true priorities are. And
so the way
there's no judgment around that.
The way I'm experiencing that is it's basically almost sort of like a flow chart, for lack of a better metaphor. Well, let's go back to the faucets and drains. Let's say as the water is falling from the faucet to the drain, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. Is that fair?
Or better yet, you know, you got this faucet that got turned on for a finite period of time that dropped a finite amount of water, and you got to decide what plant you want to water first. You know, I'm going to water food first. I'm going to water housing second, and all that comes with it. And then for me, I'm going to water. Well, we can back up and get technical, but I'm a Christian. I believe in the tithe, so I'm going to tithe first, and then beyond that, I'm going to give, and then I'm going to start going, what's most important to me? And maybe that's taking your family on a trip to Hawaii. Maybe that's that new purse that you've been watching for. Maybe it's retirement. But the beauty of YNAB is it forces you to really do some deep private work around what's important to you financially. What is it that you really want to truly accomplish? Because more often than not, we do not make decisions around priorities. We make decisions around spur of the moment or what feels good in the moment. And that's not the way to be successful financially.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, that's the whole spontaneity thing, you know, that we were talking about at the very top. Like, the opposite of discipline is waking up every day and feeling like, you know, what am I going to do today? Like when your feet hit the floor, right? So money, of course, is a direct extension of that, right? So,
no question.
So, you know, I guess, yeah, fair. Yeah, perfect. Let's transition into the next one because I feel like that's clear enough to move on.